Hello everyone, welcome to History at Bedtime. Tonight, we are going to drift quietly into a world of candlelit studios, cobblestone streets, and bustling workshops where artists, inventors, and thinkers wandered through days full of curiosity, creativity, and sometimes unexpected chaos. A world where ideas flowed as freely as water from fountains, and the boundaries between science, art, and daily life blurred in fascinating ways. A gentle warning: this story may make the past feel startlingly vivid. You probably won't make it through this day without feeling transported into another era, and that's exactly the point. Let your imagination wander, let curiosity soften the edges of the present, and allow yourself to drift alongside the people who lived centuries before you. Take a deep, calming breath. Let your shoulders relax. Let the day slip softly away. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. Tonight, we will follow the quiet footsteps of painters mixing their colors, inventors sketching strange machines, and scholars turning pages by flickering candlelight. We will peek behind the grand facades of Florence, Venice, and Rome to discover the hidden stories tucked into workshops, secret gardens, and narrow streets. Along the way, we'll feel the pulse of invention, the thrill of creation, and the subtle rhythms of daily life that made the Renaissance both ordinary and extraordinary. An era alive with possibilities waiting to be whispered to you as you drift towards sleep. You open your eyes to the soft light of the morning creeping through a small window. The warmth of the sun caresses your skin, but there's a slight chill in the air, just enough to make you want to stay in bed for a little while longer. You feel the worn linen sheets against your skin as you stretch, the slight discomfort of an old mattress reminding you that the Renaissance wasn't exactly known for its luxury. It's not like today, with all those fancy memory foam beds and electric blankets, is it? You probably won't make it through this day, but let's see how far you can go before you realize that everything you're about to experience today is way more exciting than your 21st century routine. I mean, who needs another Zoom meeting? Right now, you're starting to wake up. The scent of fresh bread drifts in from the hearth below, mixing with the lingering aroma of last night's firewood. You hear the soft crackling of a small flame in the corner of the room, as if it's trying to coax you into joining the world outside. You sit up slowly, your legs swinging over the edge of the bed, your bare feet touching the cold stone floor beneath you. The room is small, but warm enough, with a single chair tucked beside a table cluttered with the remnants of last night's dinner. Some bread, a bit of cheese, and perhaps a leftover drink. You stand and make your way to the wash basin. The water is cool, refreshing in its simplicity, and you splash it on your face, wiping away the sleep that clings to your eyes. There's no running water here, no modern luxuries, just a jug filled with water and a basin to catch whatever you don't manage to aim correctly. Today is going to be just another ordinary day, filled with the simple rhythms of life in the 1500s, or so you think. You dress in your woolen tunic, cinching a leather belt around your waist and pulling on a pair of sturdy shoes. No time for anything fancy. People in the Renaissance didn't really have the time or energy to fuss about fashion, at least not in the way we do today. Your clothing might not be embroidered with gold thread, but it serves its purpose. It's practical, and that's what matters. You hear a faint knock at the door, a sign that your family is up and about, starting the day. You gather your things and head downstairs, where the scent of food gets stronger. Your mother is busy by the hearth, likely preparing a simple breakfast, perhaps a slice of bread with butter, maybe a little wine to start the day. It's early, but there's work to do, and no one in the Renaissance has the luxury of wasting time. The day is stretching on, and you can feel the weight of it settling around you. You've walked through the city, past the grand cathedrals, the crowded markets, and the busy workshops, but there's still more to see. The Renaissance is all around you, everywhere you look, hidden in the corners of the streets, tucked behind doors and windows, waiting to be discovered. You find yourself drawn to the university, the beating heart of intellectual life in the Renaissance. It's not a grand structure like the cathedrals, but it is just as vital, if not more so. Inside, the walls are lined with books that are just beginning to be mass-produced. Thanks to the printing press, it's a small but significant change in how knowledge is spread, and you can sense it in the air. The students and scholars are passionate, eager to dive into the world of ideas, to push the boundaries of what they know and what they believe. You step into the lecture hall, where a professor is standing at the front, scribbling something on a chalkboard. His words are spoken with an air of authority, but there's a hint of uncertainty in his tone. This is the Renaissance. After all, even the scholars are still figuring things out. You overhear a discussion about the heliocentric theory, a new and controversial idea being put forward by a man named Copernicus. He's suggesting that the Earth isn't the center of the universe, as everyone has believed for centuries, but that the Earth orbits the Sunday. It's a radical idea, one that challenges everything people have known about the cosmos. Some embrace it, others scoff at it, but one thing is clear. The Renaissance is a time of questioning, of pushing boundaries, of challenging the status quo. Historians still debate whether the heliocentric theory was truly the most significant scientific breakthrough of the time. Some say that it laid the groundwork for modern astronomy, while others argue that the discovery was just one of many that would have happened eventually. But no matter how you look at it, the fact remains that this idea, this questioning of the universe, is emblematic of the Renaissance itself. It's a time when people dared to ask, what if, and why not? And in doing so, they reshaped the way we understand the world. You leave the university behind, your mind buzzing with the possibilities of what you've just heard. It's incredible to think that you're living in an age where ideas are being formed and reformed, where the foundations of modern science, philosophy, and art are being laid. The Renaissance isn't just a period of history, it's the birth of the modern world. Outside, the sun is beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden light over the city. The streets are quieter now, but there's still life in the air. You pass a small tavern where a group of men is gathered, talking animatedly. The sound of laughter drifts out of the open door, and you catch snippets of conversation. They're talking about the latest plays being performed at the theatre, about the newest works of art being displayed at the local gallery. It's a reminder that the Renaissance wasn't just about grand intellectual movements. You think about the playwrights and artists of the time, people like Shakespeare, who would soon be captivating audiences with his words, or Raphael, whose paintings would hang in palaces for centuries to come. Their works are more than just entertainment. They're a reflection of the world around them. In a way, the Renaissance is an age of self-expression, a time when people began to see themselves not just as subjects of a king or the church, but as individuals capable of great achievement. It's a time when human potential is recognized and celebrated. Historians still debate whether the Renaissance was truly a break from the past or just a continuation of ideas that had been percolating for centuries. Some argue that the Renaissance was simply the revival of classical ideas, while others contend that it was a true rebirth, a time when new ideas emerged that fundamentally changed the way people viewed the world. But one thing is certain, the Renaissance was a moment when the boundaries of... As you continue your walk through the quieting streets, you begin to feel a sense of connection to the people of this time. They were so much like us, and yet so different. They too had their struggles, their triumphs, their fears. They too were caught in the grip of a rapidly As you step into the common room, the day begins to unfold around you. Your father is reading a scroll, a philosophical work from one of the great thinkers of the day, perhaps by Erasmus or Machiavelli. After all, it's the Renaissance, the age of discovery and learning. The mind is just as important as the body, maybe even more so. Historians still debate whether the Renaissance was truly a rebirth of classical knowledge or just a fleeting moment of rediscovery. In many ways, it was both. But let's be real, back then, people didn't have access to Google to confirm the facts. They were just figuring things out as they went along, much like you are now. Your breakfast is modest but comforting. A piece of bread, some cheese, and a small cup of watered-down wine. Because, let's be honest, drinking something stronger before noon wasn't exactly frowned upon. It was, in fact, quite common. Everyone's got to cope somehow, especially when the world is in the middle of so much change. Your family chatters quietly over the meal, discussing mundane things. Your sister's latest embroidery project, your neighbor's loud rooster, the weather, which is always a safe topic for conversation. You're just one of many, doing your best to survive, thrive, and maybe even dream a little bit. But outside, life is already stirring in the streets. You hear the distant sound of merchants calling out their wares, the rhythmic clattering of horses' hooves on cobblestone streets. The Renaissance wasn't just about art or philosophy, though they're what we often remember. It was also about the relentless pace of change that swept through society, ideas, innovations, and inventions that shaped the world in ways most people back then couldn't even begin to imagine. You take one last bite of bread and stand, stretching your arms overhead before heading out the door. The day awaits, and with it, the world. But before you nod off, just remember, if you like what you hear, don't forget to gently tap that like button and subscribe for more historical lullabies. And do drop a comment, letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's a little tradition I'm starting tonight. Now, let's dive back in, and thank you for being here with me tonight. The streets are already bustling with activity as you step outside. The world smells of fresh bread and horse manure, mixed with the faintest hint of sea salt, carried on the breeze from the nearby port. It's a busy morning, and people are already going about their tasks. Merchants unloading their goods, children darting in and out of the crowd, and the occasional noble strolling by, likely on their way to see a patron or enjoy a leisurely day at the latest art exhibition. You walk past a market stall where a vendor is selling brightly colored cloth, the colors so rich that they almost seem to glow in the sunlight. It's hard not to admire the skill it took to dye these fabrics. After all, this is a time when every color was hard-earned. Pigments weren't just something you picked up at the local craft store. Each hue was a story of labor, trade, and sometimes risk. You stop at another stall where a blacksmith is hammering away at a piece of iron, shaping it into something useful, perhaps a tool, perhaps a weapon. It's hard to say. The Renaissance was an age of invention, a time when craftsmen and thinkers were hard at work. You marvel at the simple tools you see in the blacksmith's shop, nothing like today's shiny gadgets, but somehow more enduring, more grounded in the reality of a world that hasn't yet figured out how to simplify things. Speaking of simplicity, you wonder how you'd fare in a world without your modern comforts. No smartphones, no instant gratification. Back then, life was slower, but that didn't mean it was any easier. People worked hard for their daily bread, literally and figuratively. You think of your family back at home and how, in some ways, their lives might be far simpler than ours. They didn't have to worry about the stock market, or deadlines, or bills, but they also didn't have air conditioning or Wi-Fi, which you're sure they'd miss just a little. On your walk through the market, you can't help but notice the hustle of the Renaissance city. It's busy, but it's a different kind of busy. People working with their hands, creating things that last, even if only for a while. You can't help but admire the steady rhythm of it all. No rush to get things done. No artificial urgency. Just people getting by, finding joy in the small moments. But let's not forget the inventions that are changing everything. The printing press is one of the most important inventions of the time, and you can feel its presence, even if it's not immediately obvious. You pass by a small shop selling books, many of them newly printed, and you feel a wave of excitement. This invention is going to change the world. No longer will knowledge be confined to the rich and powerful. Now it's available to anyone who can afford a book. You can only imagine how exciting it must have been to hold one of those new prints in your hands. Historians still debate whether the printing press was the singular most important invention of the Renaissance, but there's no doubt it played a massive role in shaping the modern world. Thanks to it, the world of ideas expanded exponentially, leading to faster dissemination of knowledge, art, and science. Imagine a world without it. No books, no newspapers, no instant information. The world would be a very different place indeed. As you continue on your journey, you pass by a small group of scholars engaged in an animated discussion about the stars, a reminder that the Renaissance was also an era of exploration, not just in the world around them, but in their understanding of the universe. The stars are just as mysterious to you now as they were to these thinkers, but somehow their pursuit of knowledge seems more meaningful, more grounded in curiosity than in the pursuit of answers for answers' sake. There's something about their approach to the world that feels refreshingly patient, and with that, you walk on, your steps a little lighter, your mind a little fuller, and your sense of the world a little broader. The city is alive, vibrant, a swirling tapestry of sound and color. You pass by the great stone walls of a cathedral, its towers stretching toward the heavens, and feel the weight of history pressing down on you. The Renaissance was a time of extraordinary architectural feats, structures that would leave an impression for centuries to come. The builders and architects who designed these towering cathedrals, town halls, and palaces weren't just thinking of the present. They were dreaming of the future, of leaving a legacy. You stop to admire the cathedral's facade. The intricacy of the stonework is impressive, almost mind-boggling. Each carving, each detail is a testament to the skill and dedication of its creators. It's a building that was made to last, just like the ideas of the time. Some of these masterpieces, like the one you're gazing at, are still standing long after the builders are gone, their names forgotten, but their work immortal. You can almost hear the voices of the craftsmen who labored over these stones, chiseling away at the marble, shaping it into something more than just a building. It's a monument to faith, sure, but also a monument to human ingenuity. And isn't that what the Renaissance was all about? Pushing boundaries, seeking knowledge, striving for something greater? It's easy to take this kind of beauty for granted, especially when you can hop into a car and drive to a museum to see similar works of art. But back then, each stone was a piece of history in the making, each one laid by hand, each one carefully positioned, each one contributing to something that would endure. You imagine what it must have felt like to be one of those builders, to know that your work would live on far beyond your own lifetime. Historians still debate how much of this grand architecture was truly driven by religious zeal and how much by a desire for personal or political power. Was it about faith, or was it about showing off wealth and influence? Well, it was probably a bit of both, wasn't it? As you continue your walk, you pass by a group of students huddled together, discussing a new work by one of the great Renaissance minds. They're talking about the writings of Niccolo Machiavelli, his thoughts on power, governance, and the complexities of human nature. It's easy to see why these ideas are gaining traction. The Renaissance is not just about art and science, it's about politics and philosophy too. The thinkers of the time are reimagining the way the world works, challenging the old systems and pushing for new ways of thinking about power, justice, and freedom. You stop for a moment to listen, even though their conversation is far beyond your own grasp. The words they're speaking are foreign to you, and you wonder how much they understand the depth of what they're discussing. Then again, that's the beauty of the Renaissance. It was a time when everyone seemed to be thinking critically, questioning everything, and daring to envision something better. But not all of the Renaissance was about grand intellectual debates or monumental buildings. The period was also a time of significant social change. The rise of the merchant class was one such change. These merchants were not just traders. They were the new power brokers of the time. They had the money, the influence, and, most importantly, the connections to shape the future. These were the people who funded the artists, the scholars, the architects, and the scientists. Without them, we might not have had the great achievements of the Renaissance at all. As you walk through the marketplace, you notice the merchants hawking their wares. Their stalls are filled with exotic goods from faraway lands, spices from the East, textiles from Africa, and fine silks from the Far East. These goods weren't just luxuries. They were symbols of wealth and power. They were the means by which the merchant class exerted influence over the world, the way they made their mark on history. You stop at a stall selling brightly colored fabrics, each one more vibrant than the last. The merchant is eager to show you the quality of his goods, speaking in rapid, excited tones about the latest trends in fashion. It's a conversation that feels strangely familiar, even though it's happening hundreds of years in the past. Fashion, it seems, was just as important then as it is now. It was a statement of status, of wealth, and in some cases, of rebellion. After all, the Renaissance wasn't just about the celebration of art and knowledge. It was also about challenging tradition, questioning norms, and embracing new ways of thinking and living. You smile politely and move on, but the merchant's words stick with you. The Renaissance was a time of self-expression, a time when people began to realize that they could shape their world, their lives, and their identities. No longer were people content to live under the thumb of royalty or religious authorities. They were beginning to carve out their own places in the world, to define themselves in new and exciting ways. You continue your walk, the sounds of the city surrounding you, voices, clanging metal, the hum of life in a time that is both distant and somehow very familiar. It's a time of change, a time of discovery, and a time when people, for better or worse, began to redefine what it meant to be human. As you turn a corner, you're reminded of how quickly everything in the Renaissance seemed to change. The very world you're walking through is one that's in the midst of a grand transformation, and yet it also feels remarkably like the world you know today. Sure, there's no Wi-Fi, no smartphones, and no instant streaming services, but the people, their hopes, their dreams, their desires, they're not all that different from us. They, too, were just trying to make sense of their place in the world, just trying to find meaning in a time that was shifting beneath their feet. And you, like them, are simply trying to make it through the day, one step at a time. As you continue through the city, you come across a small group of artists gathered in a makeshift studio. They're working on something remarkable, each one adding their touch to a canvas that will soon come to life in ways that will astound future generations. The Renaissance was the time of the great masters, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, but it was also the time when ordinary men and women began to explore the possibilities of artistic expression. You watch them for a moment, their brushes moving with confidence and grace, and you can't help but marvel at the skill it takes to capture the human form so perfectly. It's not just about technical ability, you realize it's about the soul of the artist, the way they see the world. The Renaissance artists were masters not only of their craft, but also of human nature. They understood, and yet, even as they created masterpieces, they were not without their doubts. Every brushstroke, every line, every detail was a decision, a choice, a risk. There were no guarantees that any of them would achieve greatness, no guarantees that their work would stand the test of time. But somehow they did it anyway. They believed in their vision, and in doing so, they changed the world. As you continue your walk, you think about the inventions and discoveries that are unfolding around you. The printing press is revolutionizing the way people share ideas, making books and knowledge accessible to more people than ever before. It's hard to overstate just how important this invention is. It's the beginning of a new era, an era of mass communication and knowledge dissemination. Before long, people will be able to read and learn faster than ever before, and the world will never. It's a reminder that change is happening all around you, even in the quiet corners of the city, in the studios of struggling artists and the stalls of busy merchants. The future is being shaped. The Renaissance is the bridge between the past and the future, the point at which the old world of feudalism and the new world of capitalism, science, and individualism collide. The seeds of the modern world are being planted here in the street. You think about your own place in this world. What will you leave behind? What mark will you mar? And maybe, just maybe, you'll find your own way to make your mark on this ever-changing world. You've walked through the city long enough now to feel its pulse, the rhythm of life that underlies everything. It in the voices you hear, the footsteps that echo against the cobblestones, the laughter that spills from the taverns, and the murmurs of discussion in the streets. The Renaissance wasn't just out art or ideas. It was about the people who lived through it, ordinary men and women, just like you, navigating the complexities of a world that was changing before their eyes. You make your way to a quiet park, a small oasis in the middle of the city. The trees are just beginning to bloom, their soft green leaves rustling in the evening breeze. You sit on a bench, taking in the peaceful scene. It's hard to imagine that this same city, this same park, will one day be. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the sounds of the city, the distant hum of the marketplace, the rhythmic clink of hammers in the blacksmith's shop, the soft rustle of papers as scholars continue to write, to share, to dream. In the distance, you hear the faint sound of a chirk, and perhaps, just for tonight, that's all you need. The day slips into evening, and as the city quiets, a new rhythm takes over. The shadows lengthen, and the streets seem to take on a more reflective, almost timeless quality. You wander through the city's winding paths, past the grand palaces and bustling town squares, toward the quieter, more intimate spaces where the true heart of the Renaissance lives. It's in the little details, the way a window frame catches the light of the setting sun, the flicker of candlelight spilling through a doorway, or the soft murmur of a family gathered around a dinner table. As you make your way through the narrow streets, you pass a modest house with a faint glow coming from within. The scent of roasted meats and herbs drifts from the open door. This is the kind of home you've seen countless times today, and yet each one is uniquely its own, a reflection of the people who live there. The Renaissance may have been a time of great innovation, but it was also a time when the basic rhythms of life remained unchanged. Families ate, worked, and rested much the same as they always had, even as the world around them transformed. You stop for a moment, watching the flickering light in the window, wondering what it would be like to be part of this scene. A family gathering around the table, sharing stories and food, talking about the day's events. Perhaps they're discussing the latest political developments, or maybe they're simply gossiping about the neighbor's new horse. Whatever the conversation, it's clear that even in this time of great intellectual and artistic flourishing, the most important things in life remain the same. The quiet moments, the small conversations, the human connections. You feel the same sense of intimacy in the small shop you pass next. It's run by an older woman who sells herbs and remedies, an apothecary of sorts. She's just closing up for the day, but she still greets you with a smile. Her shop smells of lavender and mint, a pleasant, calming scent that feels oddly timeless. You ask her if she has any advice for a good night's sleep, and she chuckles softly, offering you a small sachet of dried flowers. "Sleep well," she says, her voice low and soothing, "and dream of the past." You nod, tucking the sachet into your pocket. It's a small gesture, but somehow it feels significant. In the Renaissance, people were still tied to the natural world in ways we've long since forgotten. They believed that nature held the answers to many of life's questions. Herbs and potions weren't just remedies, they were part of the fabric of daily life, part of the way people interacted with the world around them. Historians still debate how much the Renaissance truly embraced the ideals of classical antiquity, especially in terms of medicine and science. Some argue that the period was more focused on rediscovery than on true innovation, while others contend that it laid the groundwork for modern scientific methods. But whatever the case, one thing is clear. The Renaissance was a time when people began to question old beliefs and explore new ideas. It was a time when the natural world was seen not as something to be conquered, but as something to be understood and respected. As you continue your walk, you find yourself thinking about the inventions of the time. The printing press, for example, was one of the most important innovations of the Renaissance. It revolutionized the way knowledge was shared, making books more accessible and allowing ideas to spread more quickly than ever before. Imagine what it must have been like to hold one of the first printed books in your hands, an object that represented not just knowledge, but the potential for change. You come to a small square where a group of people has gathered around a street performer. He's playing a lute, the soft, melodic strains of music adding to the evening's calm atmosphere. The crowd is quiet, listening intently to the music. It's easy to forget, in the hustle of everyday life, how powerful music can be. The lute, a symbol of Renaissance culture, sounds as beautiful now as it did centuries ago. For a moment, you simply stand there, letting the music wash over you. It's a reminder that the Renaissance wasn't just about philosophy, science, or art. It was about life, the simple pleasures, the quiet moments, the beauty found in the mundane. And it's in these moments, these fleeting seconds, that the true spirit of the Renaissance is revealed, not in the grand achievements or the towering cathedrals, but in the small, intimate acts of creation and connection. You're tempted to stay, to let the music carry you away, but the night is still young and there's more to see. You turn away from the performer, continuing your walk through the winding streets, each step a journey through history. The Renaissance is all around you, in every stone, every sound, every flicker of candlelight in the windows. You are part of it, too, even if only for a moment. The evening deepens, and the streets become quieter, but the city is still alive with possibility. You walk on, your steps slow and steady, your thoughts drifting, as if you were walking through a dream. Perhaps that's what the Renaissance was, an age of dreams, of possibility, of belief in something greater than what had come before. And as you walk through this time, you can't help but feel a connection to those who lived here, to their hopes, their dreams, and their endless curiosity. As the night draws in, the city's pace begins to slow. The once bustling streets are quieter now, the sounds of commerce and chatter replaced by the distant hum of the night's creatures. The Renaissance, for all its vibrancy, was also a time of reflection, of moments spent contemplating life and the world beyond. As you walk deeper into the heart of the city, you find yourself entering an area known for its philosophers, scholars, and intellectuals, a space where ideas were shared, debated, and tested. You pause in front of a building where a small group of thinkers has gathered. They're seated around a wooden table, engaged in animated discussion. You catch snippets of their conversation as you pass, ideas about the nature of power, the role of the individual, the responsibilities of rulers and citizens. These are the kinds of conversations that defined the Renaissance. It wasn't just about art or exploration. It was about questioning the very foundations of society and politics. The thinkers of this time were not content to simply accept things as they were. They wanted to understand why the world worked the way it did and whether it could be changed. You can't help but be struck by the energy of these debates. It's a reminder that the Renaissance wasn't just about the grand achievements of the artists and architects. It was also about the power of ideas. The discussions taking place here, discussions that are still relevant today, shape the way we think about politics, society, and the human experience. In many ways, the Renaissance laid the groundwork for the Enlightenment and the modern world we know today. Historians still debate whether the Renaissance was truly the birthplace of modern political thought, or if it was simply a precursor to the political ideas that would emerge in later centuries. Some argue that the Renaissance emphasis on humanism and individualism was a major turning point, while others contend that its political thought was more grounded in tradition than in true innovation. But regardless of where you stand, it's clear that the Renaissance was a time of intellectual ferment, a time when new ideas were being born, ideas that would shape the future in profound ways. As you continue walking, you reflect on the idea that change doesn't always come in grand, sweeping gestures. Sometimes it's the quiet moments, the small conversations, the whispered debates that spark the greatest revolutions. And in that way, the Renaissance was no different from today. It was a time of questioning, of dreaming, and of striving to understand the world in new and exciting ways. And you, like the thinkers around you, are part of that process, even if you don't always realize it. Every step you take, every thought you have, is part of the ongoing journey of discovery that began centuries ago. In a way, the Renaissance never truly ended. It continues in every new idea, in every new invention, in every new way we think about the world. As the night settles in, you feel a sense of calm, of connection to this moment in history. You are, in a way, walking in the footsteps of the Renaissance. And perhaps that's the most comforting thought of all, that we're all part of something much larger than ourselves, something that stretches back through time and will continue on, long after we're gone. The air is cool now, and the evening stretches before you like a long winding road. The city, once buzzing with the noise of trade and bustling crowds, is slowly fading into a softer, more introspective pace. As you stroll along the quiet streets, you can feel the weight of history pressing in on you, but also a sense of peace. You pause near a small fountain, the sound of water trickling over stone, providing a calm background to the evening's quiet. It's in moments like this you realize that the Renaissance begins to feel more real. The books and art, the soaring cathedrals and grand discoveries, they all seem a little less distant when you're walking these very streets, breathing in the same air as the people who lived through it all. You take a deep breath, filling your lungs with the cool night air, and for a moment, you're no longer just an observer of history, you're a part of it. And yet, there's something strangely comforting about the fact that these moments, these quiet reflections, were once a part of someone else's life. It's a reminder that time moves on, but the experiences of the past are never truly gone. They linger, waiting to be rediscovered by those who are willing to look. As you walk past a small bakery, you catch a whiff of freshly baked bread, warm, inviting. Even the simple act of baking has a sense of history to it. Bread, the staple food of many, has been a part of human life for thousands of years, and in the Renaissance, it was no different. It's a symbol of sustenance, of life, of survival. But beyond its practicality, bread was also a symbol of social status. The types of bread people ate could tell you a lot about their position in society. Fine white bread, made from the best grains, was reserved for the wealthy, while the poorer classes would have had to make do with darker, coarser bread made from rye or barley. Food, like everything else in the Renaissance, was a reflection of the world's social divisions. You think about this for a moment, how something as simple as bread can hold so much meaning. It's a small, everyday thing, but in a way, it's a microcosm of Renaissance life. The world was changing, yes, but it was still grounded in the same old routines. The people who lived in this time had to navigate the complexities of their social positions just as we do today. Some things, it seems, never really change. Historians still debate the exact role food played in Renaissance social dynamics. Some argue that food was a key marker of class identity, while others contend that it was the availability of food itself, its abundance or scarcity, that truly defined a person's status. What is clear, though, is that food and the way people ate was just one more way in which the Renaissance reflected the complexities of human life. You continue walking, the scent of bread lingering in your nose, and find yourself at the edge of a small plaza. There's a fountain here, too, but this one is more grandiose, a symbol of the city's wealth and ambition. It's surrounded by statues, each one representing a different figure from mythology or history, their faces chiseled in marble, their eyes forever gazing into the distance. The Renaissance, after all, wasn't just about the present. It was also about the past, about rediscovering the knowledge and beauty of ancient civilizations. And here you stand, surrounded by the fruits of that rediscovery. The statues, the buildings, the art, all of it is part of a cultural revolution that forever changed the way humanity saw itself. In the Renaissance, people began to realize that they weren't just subjects of the divine or the monarch. They were individuals with thoughts, feelings, and dreams that mattered. You sit on a nearby bench, taking in the view. The sun is now fully gone, and the stars are beginning to twinkle above you. The Renaissance, much like the night sky, is filled with possibilities, some seen, some hidden, but all there, waiting to be explored. It's a world of ideas, of creativity, of self-expression, but also a world of uncertainty and doubt. No one knew where it would all lead, but that was part of the excitement. As you sit there, lost in thought, you can't help but feel a sense of wonder at the world around you. The Renaissance wasn't just about intellectual achievements or artistic masterpieces. It was about people like you, who lived in a time of profound change, who grappled with their own questions about life, love, and the future. And in that sense, it's not so different from today. The world is always changing, and we are always trying to make sense of it, one day at a time. Historians still debate the extent to which the Renaissance should be considered a period of true intellectual revolution. Some argue that the Renaissance was simply a revival of classical ideas, while others believe it marked the beginning of modern thought. Whatever the case, what's undeniable is that it was a time of immense creativity, of daring new ideas that challenged the very fabric of society. You stand up from the bench, stretching your legs, and continue on your walk. The night is still young, and there's more to discover, more to learn. The Renaissance is all around you, in the streets, in the buildings, in the hearts and minds of the people who lived here. And as you walk, you can't help but feel that, in some small way, you're a part of it, too. The moon is high in the sky now, casting a silvery glow over the city. The streets, which had been so busy earlier in the day, are now quiet, bathed in the soft light of lanterns. You find yourself in a different part of the city, one that you haven't explored before. It's quieter here, more residential. The houses are smaller, more intimate, and there's a sense of calm that pervades the air. You walk past a row of houses, each one more modest than the last, Some have small gardens out front. Others have little courtyards tucked away behind high wooden fences. The people who live here are the ones who keep this city running. The artisans, the laborers, the workers. They don't have the wealth or status of the merchants or the nobles, but they play an essential role in the fabric of Renaissance life. Without them, the grand ideas and masterpieces of the time would never have come to life. You stop in front of one house where the door is slightly ajar. Inside, you can hear the sound of a family gathered around a table, laughing and talking, their voices rising and falling in the rhythm of conversation. It's a familiar sound, one you've heard countless times before, but somehow it feels different now. These people are living their own version of the Renaissance, one that's quieter, more private, but just as important. It's a reminder that the Renaissance wasn't just about the grand thinkers or the famous artists. It was about ordinary people, too. It was about the lives they led, the work they did, and the dreams they had. Everyone, in their own way, contributed to the world that was being built. And in that sense, the Renaissance was a time of inclusion, of opportunities for everyone to shape the future. Historians still debate how inclusive the Renaissance truly was. Some argue that it was an era dominated by the elite, while others contend that it offered opportunities for social mobility. Regardless of the debate, it's clear that the Renaissance was a time of great potential, where ideas and innovation were accessible to more people than ever before. You continue on your walk, the sounds of the city fading into the background, and as you do, you realize that you've come full circle. The Renaissance is not just a moment in history, it's a journey, one that continues to shape the world we live in today. And as you walk through these streets, you are a part of that journey, just as the people of the Renaissance were. The moonlight seems to grow brighter as you step forward, casting long shadows on the cobblestones. The city is peaceful now, and you feel a sense of connection to this time and place. You are, in a way, walking in the footsteps of those who lived here before you, those who dreamed, those who created, those who changed the world. And perhaps, in some small way, you're still part of that change, too. As the night wears on, the city is quiet, but there's an energy in the air, an almost tangible hum, like the world is holding its breath, waiting for the dawn of a new day. You find yourself standing at the edge of a small bridge, gazing out over a river that snakes through the city. The water flows steadily, its surface rippling gently under the light of the moon. This river, like the city itself, has seen centuries pass by. It's been here long before the Renaissance began, and it will continue to flow long after it ends. The Renaissance, for all its remarkable changes, was rooted in the past. It was a time of rediscovery, a time when people looked to the ancient world for inspiration. The river before you is much like that. It carries with it the history of the past, but it also moves forward, flowing toward the future, shaping the world as it goes. It's a reminder that history isn't just a series of events, it's a constant, unbroken flow. Each generation builds on the one before it, and the flow of time never stops. You think about the artists and philosophers who once walked these same streets, who once stood on this very bridge, gazing at the river as they pondered the mysteries of the world. They too were trying to make sense of their place in history, trying to find their own way in a rapidly changing world. And just as the river flows, so too did their ideas, spreading out and influencing the generations that followed. It's easy to forget that the Renaissance wasn't a single event. It wasn't just one moment in time that changed everything. It was a process, a gradual unfolding of ideas and discoveries, a period of growth and experimentation. People like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael didn't just create masterpieces overnight. They spent years refining their craft, experimenting with new techniques, and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The world they created didn't happen all at once. It was the result of centuries of thought and creativity, culminating in a moment when the potential for change seemed limitless. Historians still debate the origins of the Renaissance. Some argue that it began in Italy, while others point to the influence of the ancient Greek and Roman cultures that were rediscovered during the period. Regardless of its origins, what's clear is that the Renaissance was a time when everything felt possible. The world was changing and people were determined to make the most of it. You take a deep breath, the cool night air filling your lungs. You feel the weight of the river's current beneath you, a reminder that life, much like this water, is constantly moving. You've seen it today. In the artists, studios, the bustling markets, and the quiet homes, the Renaissance was a time of relentless movement, of people striving to build something new, something lasting. But it was also a time of reflection, of looking to the past for guidance and inspiration. As you stand there, you realize how much the Renaissance is like this river. It's not about reaching a final destination. It's about the journey. It's about the ideas and innovations that flowed from one person to the next, shaping the world in ways no one could have predicted. The river keeps flowing, just as the Renaissance continues to influence the world today. You take one last look at the river before turning away, the sound of the water fading into the distance. The city is quiet now, but the echoes of the past linger, and you can't help but feel a deep connection to it all. The Renaissance, with all its beauty and complexity, has shaped the world in ways we are still discovering. And as you walk back through the city, you realize that you, too, are part of this ongoing flow, a part of history, even if it's just for a fleeting moment. You continue through the streets, now even quieter than before. The moon is high in the sky, casting a silvery glow on the stone buildings. The city feels almost like a painting, frozen in time, a snapshot of an era that has long since passed. But as you walk through these streets, you realize that the Renaissance isn't as far away as it might seem. It's alive in the air, in the stone, in the very fabric of the city. You pass by a small shop where a craftsman is working by candlelight, carving wood with the precision of a master. His hands move with practiced ease, shaping the wood into a beautiful piece of furniture. It's a reminder that the Renaissance wasn't just about grand paintings or sculptures. It was about craftsmanship, too. The people who made everyday objects, who built the structures and tools that the world relied on, were just as important as the artists and thinkers who changed the course of history. You stop for a moment, watching the craftsman work. His focus is absolute. his hands steady as he carves. He doesn't look up as you pass, but you can sense the dedication in every stroke of his tool. This, too, is the Renaissance, a time when people took pride in their work, when the simple act of creating was a reflection of the human spirit. Whether it was a painting, a piece of furniture, or a scientific discovery, the act of creation was something sacred. It was a way of engaging with the world, of leaving a mark on history. Historians still debate whether the Renaissance truly valued individualism in the way we think of it today. Some argue that it was a time of collective achievement, where the contributions of many were necessary to create the lasting cultural and intellectual legacy we associate with the period. Others contend that it was the age of the individual genius, the artists, the scientists, the thinkers, who broke away from tradition and forged their own paths. The truth, of course, is probably a little bit of both. You continue your walk through the city, the sound of your footsteps echoing in the quiet night. You pass by more homes, more shops, more artists and craftsmen, each one contributing to the city's rhythm. The Renaissance was a time of collaboration, of different voices coming together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. It wasn't just about the elite few, it was about everyone working together, building a new world. And as you walk through the city, you realize that this same spirit of collaboration, of creation, is still alive today. The Renaissance may have ended long ago, but its influence is still felt in the way we create, in the way we think, in the way we build our lives. The journey that began in the streets of Florence, in the studios of Leonardo and Michelangelo, continues to this day. In every new idea, in every new creation, you stop for a moment and look up at the sky, the stars twinkling above you. The night is still, and for a moment, everything feels timeless. The city, the river, the people, they're all part of something much larger than you can fully comprehend. But as you stand here, breathing in the cool night air, you can't help but feel a sense of peace, of connection. The Renaissance was a time of great change, but it was also a time of great beauty, of human potential realized. And as you continue on your way, you carry that beauty with you, just as those who lived through the Renaissance did. You are part of that ongoing journey, and perhaps, just perhaps, you'll leave your own mark on the world. The night feels longer now, stretching out as the last of the evening's activities fade into a peaceful stillness. The distant echo of footsteps on cobblestone streets becomes a soft, rhythmic pulse, almost as though the city itself is breathing, exhaling a sigh of relief after the day's chaos. It's a far cry from the vibrant pulse of midday, and yet, in its quietude, there's a sense of continuity. You pass by an open courtyard where an elderly man is playing a simple tune on his flute. The melody floats in the cool air, rising and falling with a soft grace, filling the space with a fleeting sense of nostalgia. The Renaissance may have been defined by its grand intellectual movements, by the artists, scholars, and architects who reshaped the world. But at its heart, it was still about simple human joys, the beauty of music, of quiet moments, of lives lived with intention. The old man's tune reminds you of the rich oral traditions of the time. In an era without mass communication, stories news, and ideas were often shared through conversation, music, and gatherings. The Renaissance was not just an era of written works and monumental art. It was a time when the spoken word carried just as much weight. Think about it. The plays of Shakespeare were written to be spoken aloud, heard by audiences who laughed, cried, and applauded. The works of Erasmus were debated in public halls, each word spoken with a weight of authority. Every idea was part of a conversation that shaped the world. It's easy to forget how much was conveyed through the simple act of talking, of listening. Today, we're constantly surrounded by information, screens, articles, podcasts, posts, but in the Renaissance, everything was personal. Knowledge was passed from one person to the next, face to face, in conversations that might last for hours, sometimes days, and in those conversations, people discovered not just facts, but meaning, and in doing so, helped create a world where ideas and art could flourish. Historians still debate how much the oral traditions of the Renaissance shaped the intellectual landscape of the time. Some suggest that the oral exchange of ideas was just as important as the written word in advancing knowledge, while others argue that the written word, particularly with the rise of printing, was the true catalyst for the intellectual explosion of the period. One thing is certain. The Renaissance was an era defined by the exchange of ideas in whatever form it took, and in that exchange, the world was forever changed. The old man finishes his song and smiles at you, his weathered face a reflection of years lived with patience, wisdom, and a deep appreciation for the simple pleasures of life. You smile back and continue on your way, your mind still lingering on the beauty of his tune, the simplicity of it all. In the grand tapestry of history, it's easy to forget the quiet moments, the moments of stillness that anchor us to the present, even as the world around us changes. As you move forward, you begin to notice how the city takes on a different character at night. The shadows stretch long across the streets, the buildings towering over you like silent giants, watching over the city's transformation. It's the perfect time for reflection, for looking back on the day, on all that you've seen and experienced. You find a small bench and sit, taking a deep breath. You think about the great minds of the Renaissance, the artists and philosophers who changed the way people viewed the world. Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Galileo. Each one of them is a giant in the history of human thought and achievement. But as you sit here, in the stillness of the night, you realize that the Renaissance was as much about the people whose names we'll never know as it was about the great figures of history. It was about the hands that shaped the world, not just with their intellect, but with their sweat, their labor, and their creativity. Historians still debate who the true genius of the Renaissance were, whether it was the artists, the scientists, or the thinkers. Was it the ones whose names have endured, or those who simply lived their lives, contributing in quiet, humble ways? Perhaps the answer is both. Perhaps the Renaissance was about the union of great minds with the everyday people who made it all possible. After all, it takes more than just a painter to create a masterpiece. It takes a society that supports art, that appreciates ideas, and that values human achievement. You feel connected to all those who lived here before you, the artisans, the merchants, the scholars, the farmers. You realize that you, too, are part of this great conversation that spans centuries. Every person, every act of creation adds to the rich tapestry of history. And while you may not see the fruits of your own labor in the same way as Da Vinci or Michelangelo, the act of living, of creating, of contributing to the world is its own form of greatness. The night deepens around you, and the sounds of the city fade into the background. The soft chirp of crickets fills the silence, and you feel yourself becoming part of the rhythm of the evening. You rise from the bench, your steps slow and deliberate, and continue your walk through the city, each moment of reflection bringing you closer to a sense of peace, a sense of belonging. As you continue walking through the now silent streets, you begin to notice the subtle changes that come with the passage of time. The Renaissance, as vibrant and exciting as it was, also marked the beginning of a slow transition, a shift away from the medieval world into a new era, one that would eventually give birth to the modern age. You can feel that change in the air, the sense that the world is on the cusp of something new, something unknown. You pass by a small tavern, the faint glow of candlelight spilling out from within. The sound of quiet laughter and the clink of mugs comes from inside. And for a moment, you wonder about the people gathered there. What stories are they telling? What dreams are they sharing? The Renaissance was not just about the grand events of history. It was about the daily lives of ordinary people, the stories they told, the dreams they dared to have, and the ways they shaped the world without even knowing it. In a time when information traveled slowly, stories were often the fastest way for ideas to spread, just like the artisans you saw earlier, who passed down their knowledge from one generation to the next. The stories told in taverns and homes and marketplaces became the foundation for the future. Each story, each conversation added a new layer to the complex tapestry of the Renaissance. Historians still debate how much of the Renaissance was driven by social class divisions. Some argue that the period's greatest achievements were reserved for the elite, the artists funded by wealthy patrons, the philosophers supported by noble families, while others contend that the social mobility of the time allowed for greater participation in intellectual and artistic life than ever before. But whether one was wealthy or poor, the spirit of the Renaissance touched everyone. It was a time when ideas were no longer the exclusive domain of royalty and clergy, but were shared by all. You continue walking, the path ahead becoming quieter with each step. The Renaissance was a time of intellectual and cultural revolution, but it was also a time of great uncertainty. Change is never easy, especially when it challenges centuries of tradition. But despite the challenges, despite the doubts, people continued to push forward. They believed in progress, in the power of ideas to reshape the world. As you walk through the streets, you feel a sense of awe and connection to the past. You realize that the Renaissance wasn't just a period of history. It was a journey, one that continues even today. The ideas, the inventions, the discoveries made during this time still shape the world we live in. And as you walk through these streets, you're reminded that history is never truly over. It's always unfolding, always evolving, always a part of who we are. And in this moment, in this city, you are part of that ongoing story. The city has grown even quieter as you walk deeper into its heart. The sounds of the evening fade away. No more bustling merchants or animated conversations, leaving behind a soft, almost meditative silence. The moonlight now reflects off the buildings, their stone facades glowing with a quiet, almost ethereal light. The streets, empty of crowds, are yours alone. You feel, in a strange way, as if you've slipped between two worlds, the past and the present, and are walking in the spaces that time itself has left behind. In the distance, you can hear the faint murmur of a church bell, marking the passing of another hour. The rhythm of time is constant, even when everything else around you seems still. The bell tolls for the city, for its people, for their hopes and dreams, their struggles and triumphs. It tolls for you too, a reminder that you are part of something larger, a part of history that stretches back through centuries and will continue long after you're gone. As you continue your walk, you come across a narrow street lined with modest homes. The flickering light of a candle can be seen through the cracks in the windows of the houses, each one holding its own small story. The Renaissance may have been a time of grand discoveries and larger-than-life figures, but it was also a time of quiet, everyday lives. It was in these homes, in these quiet corners of the city, that the true fabric of the Renaissance was woven. You stop in front of one house where the window is open, and you hear the soft sound of someone reading aloud. It's a woman's voice, low and steady, reading something from a book, perhaps a work of philosophy or a story from classical antiquity. The voice carries a kind of reverence, as if the words hold a secret meaning. There is something beautiful about it, the way the words are spoken, the way they echo through the night. You smile softly to yourself, realizing that this is part of the essence of the Renaissance. 2. It wasn't just about scholars in universities or artists in their studios. It was about the quiet, personal connection to the world of ideas that every individual could partake in. The Renaissance was, in many ways, the birth of the individual, of the idea that each person could contribute to the world of knowledge and creativity. For centuries, knowledge had been the domain of a select few. The church, the aristocracy, the intellectual elite. But with the advent of the printing press, books became more widely available, and for the first time in history, ordinary people could access the same knowledge as the powerful. It was an era that celebrated individual thought, the belief that every person, no matter their status, had the potential to shape the world. Historians still debate how much the rise of individualism during the Renaissance contributed to the social and political upheavals that followed. Some argue that the Renaissance emphasis on the individual was the precursor to modern democracy and the idea of human rights. Others suggest that it was merely a moment of intellectual flourishing that did not have much impact on the broader social structures of the time. Regardless of the debate, one thing is clear. The Renaissance was a time when the voice of the individual began to be heard in ways it never had been before. As you stand outside the house, listening to the woman read, you realize that this quiet moment is just as significant as the grand debates of scholars or the masterpieces of art. It's a reminder that the Renaissance was not just about the great names we remember today. It was about the lives of everyday people whose contributions, small as they might have seemed at the time, added to the legacy of this extraordinary period in history. You continue on your walk, the gentle sound of the reading fading behind you, and find yourself approaching a familiar square. The air is cooler now, and the city seems to hold its breath in anticipation of the night ahead. The stars are clearer here, their pinpricks of light scattered across the sky like scattered thoughts waiting to be captured. You pause, gazing up at them, and wonder about the lives of those who stood in this very spot centuries ago under the same stars, dreaming of what the future might hold. In many ways, the Renaissance was a time of possibility, a time when anything seemed possible. The stars themselves seemed closer then, as if the heavens were within reach and the world was ripe with potential. People like Leonardo, Galileo, and Raphael weren't just artists and scientists. They were dreamers, visionaries who believed that they could change the world, and in a way, they did. But even more than that, they were part of a larger cultural movement, a movement that spanned beyond the elite circles of intellectuals and artists. The Renaissance was, at its core, a movement of ideas, one that resonated in the hearts and minds of people from all walks of life, from the scholars in the libraries to the craftsmen in the workshops, from the merchants in the markets to the families gathered around the dinner table. The Renaissance was a shared experience. Everyone, in their own way, was contributing to the grand story of the period. You think about this as you continue your walk, the city's lights reflecting in the river beside you. History is often told through the great events, the momentous achievements, the towering figures who shaped the world. But in reality, history is a mosaic of millions of smaller moments, of conversations, of ideas, of lives lived. The Renaissance, like every period of history, was made up of those moments, and it is in those moments, the quiet, everyday experiences, that we find the true heart of the era. You stop at the edge of the river, watching the water ripple gently in the moonlight. The current flows steadily, and you are reminded of the river's quiet but unyielding power. History, too, flows onward, steady, relentless, carrying us forward. And even as you stand here, in the stillness of the night, you realize that you are part of that flow. You are part of the ongoing journey of history, just as those who lived in the Renaissance were. With that thought, you turn and begin your walk back through the city. The streets are still and quiet, but there's a sense of continuity in the air, as if everything is moving towards something. The Renaissance, with all its beauty and complexity, was just one moment in the larger tapestry of time. And though it is past, its influence is still felt today in the way we think, create, and dream. You walk on, your steps slow and deliberate, knowing that you, too, are part of this ever-unfolding story, this river of history that stretches far into the past and continues towards an uncertain but hopeful future. The night is almost complete now. the city bathed in the cool, soft light of the moon. You walk more slowly now, feeling the quiet settling around you like a soft blanket. The streets are empty, save for the occasional flicker of candlelight from a distant window or the faint murmur of a far-off conversation. It's hard not to feel a deep sense of connection to the city, to the people who lived here centuries ago, to the lives they led and the dreams they dreamed. You think back to the moments you've experienced today, the quiet artist's studio, the bustling marketplace, the scholarly debates, and the small moments of daily life. They were all a part of the larger story of the Renaissance, a story that was shaped by individuals, but also by the society in which they lived. The Renaissance was, after all, not just the work of a few great minds, but the product of a culture that was open to change, to new ideas, to new ways of thinking. The moonlight is gentler now, the shadows less pronounced, as if the world is slowly settling into a peaceful sleep. You find yourself approaching the familiar square once more, the quiet hub of the city that has seemed so full of life earlier in the day, but now, in the stillness of the night, it feels almost sacred, as though the city itself is in a state of quiet reverence. You sit on a stone bench, letting the silence wash over you, and reflect on the journey you've taken today. You've walked through the Renaissance, not as an observer, but as a participant. You've felt the pulse of the city, the energy of the people who lived here, the hope, the uncertainty, and the ambition that defined the era. Historians still debate the legacy of the Renaissance, whether it was a true rebirth of classical thought, or whether it was simply a continuation of ideas that had been simmering for centuries. Some argue that it was a time of unparalleled intellectual achievement, while others point out that it was also a time of violence, political instability, and deep social divisions. But one thing is clear: the Renaissance was a time of change, a time when the world began to look at itself differently, and in that sense, it remains relevant to this day. You close your eyes for a moment, taking in the quiet, letting the peace of the night settle in your bones. The Renaissance is over, but its influence lingers in the world. It lives on in the art we admire, the books we read, the ideas we debate. It lives on in the quiet moments, like this one, when we pause and reflect on how far we've come and how far we still have to go. The city is quiet now, the sounds of the day long gone, and in this quiet you realize that you are part of the ongoing flow of history. The Renaissance may be over, but its spirit lives on, in you, in me, and in the world we continue to shape. And with that, you settle into the stillness, ready to rest, knowing that the journey of history will continue tomorrow, and that you, too, will continue to walk along its path. The air is colder now, and the city around you seems to be holding its breath, waiting for something. The moon, full and bright, casts long shadows across the streets, its pale light gently illuminating the path ahead. As you walk through the quiet streets, the sounds of the day, of voices, of laughter, of the city's bustling energy, feel like a distant memory. The Renaissance, a period of such intense intellectual and artistic transformation, seems to have taken on a softer, more reflective quality under the moonlight. It strikes you just how much the Renaissance was a time of reinvention, not just in art, but in every corner of life. People were reimagining how they saw themselves, how they viewed the world, and even how they understood the very nature of reality. And yet, as you walk the dimly lit streets, you realize that for all the great changes that the Renaissance brought, there is a deep, grounding sense of continuity. You pass a small stone house, its window glowing faintly in the night, and you wonder what kind of conversation might be taking place within. What ideas, what dreams might be shared behind those walls. The Renaissance was, in many ways, the beginning of the modern world. It's easy to see how one could view it as a sharp, clear-cut departure from the past. But in truth, the Renaissance was as much a continuation of older ideas as it was a revolution. Think of it as a bridge between the medieval world and the modern age, a world in which the old was constantly being challenged by the new, but in ways that were rooted in the very traditions that had come before. As you walk deeper into the city, the cool night air on your skin, you pass an artist's workshop, its door slightly ajar. The faint glow of a candle flickers inside, casting long shadows on the walls. You pause for a moment, watching the artist at work. There's something mesmerizing about the way he moves, the delicate strokes of his brush, bringing life to a canvas that will one day be admired by thousands. The Renaissance was a time of immense creative achievement, a time when art was no longer simply about depicting religious scenes or political power, but about the human experience itself. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael revolutionized the world of art, but they were also products of a society that valued humanism, an intellectual movement that celebrated the potential of the individual. Historians still debate how much the humanist ideals of the Renaissance shaped its art. Was it the belief in human potential that allowed artists to push the boundaries of what was possible, or was it the growing patronage from wealthy merchants and nobles that gave them the freedom to create? Regardless, one thing is certain: the Renaissance artists were not simply creators of beautiful things, they were pioneers. They used their art to explore the complexities of the human experience, to capture the beauty of the natural world, and to challenge the conventions that had governed art for centuries. You continue your walk, the flicker of the candlelight fading behind you, and reflect on how the Renaissance was a time of innovation. It wasn't just about the masterpieces that have endured through the centuries. It was also about the small, quiet moments of discovery, of experimentation, of pushing boundaries in ways that no one could have predicted. People were learning new things about science, philosophy, and art, pushing the limits of what they knew and challenging the assumptions that had guided them for so long. It's hard to imagine a time when even the basic understanding of the world was in flux. Galileo, for example, was peering through a telescope at the stars, discovering that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe, a truth that challenged centuries of belief. Copernicus had already suggested the heliocentric model, but it was Galileo who provided the proof. His discoveries were revolutionary, but they weren't without controversy. The very fabric of society, of the way people viewed themselves and their place in the universe, was being torn apart by new ideas. And yet, despite the tension, despite the upheaval, there was a sense of excitement in the air. The Renaissance wasn't just about accepting new ideas, it was about exploring the unknown, embracing curiosity, and daring to ask, what if? Historians still debate the extent to which the scientific discoveries of the Renaissance laid the groundwork for the Enlightenment, or whether they were simply part of a broader intellectual movement that emerged slowly over time. Some say that the Renaissance was the true beginning of modern science, while others argue that it was just the beginning of a much longer process of discovery. But no matter how you view it, there's no denying that the Renaissance was a time when the seeds of modern science were planted, seeds that would eventually grow into the revolutionary ideas of the Enlightenment. As you continue walking, you pass a quiet alley, its cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. The street is empty, save for the soft rustling of leaves in the trees overhead. You pause for a moment, feeling the weight of the history that surrounds you. The Renaissance, with all its brilliance and its complexities, was a time of change, but it was also a time of continuity. People, like you, were still searching for meaning, for answers, for connection. The human experience, in many ways, hasn't changed at all. The quiet night continues as you walk deeper into the heart of the city. The streets are more familiar now, no longer the winding paths of the unknown, but the well-trodden roads of your own journey. The Renaissance has become, in some ways, more personal. It's not just the grand events or the famous names that define it. It's the everyday lives of the people who lived here, whose ideas, actions, and contributions made the Renaissance what it was. You stop by a small square, a quiet place in the city that has a sense of peace, almost sacred in its stillness. The benches are empty and the cobblestones are undisturbed, save for the occasional leaf blown by the wind. It's hard not to think of all the people who have walked these streets, who have Saturday on these benches, who have lived in this very space. The Renaissance wasn't just a time of monumental achievements. It was a time of human lives, of people trying to make sense of a world that was changing faster than they could understand. You sit on one of the benches, letting the quiet settle around you. The stars above seem closer here, their faint light a reminder of the infinite possibilities that the Renaissance opened up. People were beginning to question everything during this time, to look at the world with fresh eyes. What once seemed certain, religion, politics, science, was now up for debate. The Renaissance was a time of intellectual ferment, of ideas colliding and giving rise to new ways of thinking about the world. But it was also a time of human connection. The people of the Renaissance didn't just sit in ivory towers discussing philosophy and science. They lived, loved, laughed, and cried. They were part of a world that was changing in ways they couldn't always control, but they were also part of a movement that would shape the future. In the quiet of the night, sitting in this peaceful square, you begin to understand the full scope of what the Renaissance was. A time when everything from art to science was in the process of being redefined, and yet it was also a time of deep humanity, of people trying to make sense of their world and their place in it. Historians still debate the degree to which the Renaissance marked the end of the medieval world and the beginning of the modern age. Some argue that it was a period of transition, a moment in history when old ideas were cast aside in favor of new ones. Others believe that it was simply the culmination of a long process of intellectual development, one that stretched back through the Middle Ages and into ancient times. But no matter how it's viewed, the Renaissance was undeniably a time of radical change, and it's impossible to imagine the world we live in today without it. You take a deep breath, letting the stillness of the night fill you. The city is quiet now, but the legacy of the Renaissance is still very much alive. It's in the art we admire, the books we read, the ideas we debate. It's in the ways we think about the world, in the ways we express ourselves, in the ways we create. And with that thought, you rise from the bench, your mind filled with the beauty of the city, the power of the Renaissance, and the knowledge that you, too, are part of this ongoing journey, a journey that began centuries ago and continues today. As you walk back through the empty streets, you can't help but feel a sense of peace. The Renaissance may have been a time of great change, but it was also a time of great beauty and connection. And perhaps, just like those who lived in this time, we are all just trying to find our way, one step at a time. The streets are even quieter now, and the city seems to have settled into a deep, tranquil silence, as though the entire world is wrapped in a quiet slumber. The buildings loom above you, their stone walls whispering the stories of centuries gone by. Even the stars above seem to shine with a soft, timeless light, their brilliance undiminished by the passage of time. It's hard not to feel as though you are walking in the footsteps of those who have lived here before you, those who dreamed and created, struggled and thrived during the Renaissance. Their hopes, their fears, their quiet moments of joy and frustration, they all seem to echo in the stillness around you. You pass by a familiar building, the old library, the one where scholars once gathered, debating ideas and philosophies that would change the course of history. Today, it is silent. Its grand doors closed, but you can almost hear the murmur of voices inside, as if the very walls are still alive with the energy of intellectual pursuit. The Renaissance was, after all, a time when knowledge was cherished, when the pursuit of learning was seen as one of the highest callings. And it's not just the great thinkers we remember, it's also the countless lesser known figures who contributed to the explosion of ideas during this time. Inside the library, people were talking, sharing theories, debating science, politics, and art. It was here that Copernicus and Galileo might have discussed the heliocentric theory, or that artists like Leonardo da Vinci sketched their future inventions. The Renaissance wasn't just about artists creating beautiful things. It was about the scientists, mathematicians, and thinkers of the time who questioned old beliefs and forged new paths. It was a time when the intellectual world expanded and the possibilities seemed endless. Historians still debate whether the Renaissance was a clear break from the medieval world, or whether it was simply a natural evolution from the knowledge of the past. Some argue that the period represented the triumph of humanism, where people began to prioritize human experience over religious or divine explanations. Others maintain that the period was a continuation of ancient traditions, a revival rather than a revolution. Regardless of the specifics, one thing is certain. The Renaissance marked a significant shift in how people saw the world and their place within it. You walk on, the library fading behind you, and think about how much the Renaissance shaped our modern world. It's in the very way we think about art, science, education, and human potential. Without it, we wouldn't have the foundations upon which so many of our modern achievements are built. The Renaissance was the spark that ignited the intellectual and cultural revolutions of the following centuries: the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, and everything that followed. But in the quiet of the night, you're reminded that the Renaissance wasn't just about grand events or sweeping intellectual movements. It was about the everyday lives of the people who lived through it, the craftsmen, the farmers, the merchants, and the families who worked to make the world a better place in their own small ways. It was a time of innovation, but also of ordinary life, lived with purpose and intention. Each person, in their own way, contributed to the transformation of the world, whether through art, commerce, or simply through the work they did every day. The night deepens around you, and you find yourself slowing your pace, taking in the quiet rhythm of the world. The Renaissance may have been a time of great change, but it was also a time of continuity. The world didn't transform overnight. It was a gradual process, one that unfolded slowly, piece by piece, over the course of decades. Each new idea, each new discovery, each new work of art was just one step on the path to the modern world we know today. And in that sense, the Renaissance continues. It lives on in the way we approach the world, in the way we value creativity, curiosity, and the pursuit of knowledge. It lives on in the questions we ask and the discoveries we make in the art we create and the stories we tell. The Renaissance was not a singular moment in time, but an ongoing journey, one that we continue to walk with every new idea and every new dream. You stop for a moment, letting the silence settle around you. The world is still, the city at rest, but in that stillness, there's a sense of peace, a sense that, like the great thinkers and creators of the Renaissance, you too are part of something much larger than yourself. You are part of a continuing story, one that stretches back through history and reaches forward into the future. As you continue your walk, the sense of connection to the past and the future grows stronger. The streets, the buildings, the air around you all seem to whisper the same message. History is not something that belongs only to the past. It's something we live in, something we are a part of every single day. The night has fully embraced the city now, and the silence is profound. The lanterns that once lined the streets now glow softly, casting gentle pools of light on the cobblestones. You've reached the edge of the city, where the buildings start to give way to fields and open skies. The moon hangs low in the sky, its soft light spreading over the landscape like a blanket. The city's heartbeat, its vibrant energy, feels distant now, as if it has retreated into the past, leaving only the echoes behind. You stand for a moment, looking out over the countryside. The vastness of the land stretches before you, and you're reminded of how much the Renaissance changed not just cities, but entire regions, and even the world. It was a time when the human spirit seemed boundless, when people dreamed of exploring new lands, discovering new continents, and pushing the boundaries of the known world. The Renaissance was the age of exploration, a time when ships set sail to unknown shores and new worlds were discovered, literally and figuratively. Historians still debate whether the Renaissance was truly a global movement or if it was a European phenomenon that had little impact on the rest of the world. Some argue that the discoveries of the Renaissance led to the age of exploration, while others suggest that the true impact of the Renaissance wasn't felt until later, during the Enlightenment and beyond. Whatever the case, the Renaissance was undeniably a turning point in history, a moment when the world began to look outward, to think beyond its borders, and to explore new horizons. You turn your gaze back to the city, the soft glow of light still visible in the distance. The Renaissance may have been a time of exploration, but it was also a time of introspection, of looking inward and reflecting on what it means to be human. The artists, the philosophers, the scientists, they were all exploring the depth of the human condition, searching for answers to questions that had been asked for centuries. They were looking for meaning in a rapidly changing world, and in doing so, they changed the way we think about ourselves. As you walk back into the city, the quiet hum of the night surrounds you once more. The world is at rest, and for a moment you feel connected to it all. The past, the present, and the future. The Renaissance, with all its beauty, its challenges, and its triumphs, has left its mark on the world, and though it has passed, its influence will continue to resonate for generations to come. You pause at the gates of the city, your journey coming to a close. You take a deep breath, letting the cool night air fill your lungs, and you feel a sense of peace wash over you. The Renaissance may have been a time of great change, but it was also a time of great beauty, of creativity, and of discovery. And in that beauty, in that discovery, there is a reminder that we, too, are part of a never-ending journey, one that stretches across time, connecting us to the past, to the future, and to each other. As the city fades behind you, you step into the quiet night, knowing that the journey is never truly over. History, after all, is always unfolding, always moving forward. And you, like those who lived in the Renaissance, are part of that journey, one step at a time. And with that, the world slips into quietude once more, and the journey of history continues, always onward, always forward, like the endless flow of a river. As you close your eyes and drift into a peaceful sleep, you know that Renaissance era will continue to live within you, a part of the timeless flow of history, a city that will never truly fade away.